Interestingly, China, in spite of the fact that it's one of the region's big growth markets, and it's one of the regions where more and more companies are moving expatriate staff into, it has one of the lowest net salary levels in the region. And one of the reasons for this is, again, industry. So whereas in Hong Kong, your general expatriate, they're employed in something like banking and finance, professional services, law, so on and so forth. Where, again, salaries in these industries tend to be quite high in comparison to other industries. On the other hand, if you look at China, the types of companies who at the moment are still setting up or expanding their operations in China generally tend to be your low-cost, low-margin companies, manufacturing, fast-moving consumer goods, low-level technological manufacturing, and so on. So again, because of the fact that China's attracting these types of industries, that again will have an impact on the average expatriate salary in this location. Interestingly, however, salaries are lower in Hong Kong than in Singapore or Japan. And one of the issues that may come out of this is, does this have an impact on Hong Kong's competitiveness? If the net salary that I earn in Hong Kong is lower than I could earn if I'm either in Japan or if I'm in Singapore, does that have an impact on the ability of companies to then attract expatriate staff to come and work in Hong Kong if they have the option of working in somewhere like Japan or Singapore? Basically, what we've seen is that expatriate compensation is influenced by multiple factors. You look at not just where the employee is based, but where they come from, because some companies will calculate salary just purely based on the market where the person is based. But some companies will also look at where the person's coming from to determine that the employee's package. It's also determined by things such as cost of living, incentives, allowances, which may need to be provided to get the employee to work in that location. And it's influenced by currency as well when we're making these cross-border comparisons. Hong Kong expatriate salary packages are amongst the most varied in the world. If we look at developing locations, if we look at places like Cambodia, Vietnam, and so on, expatriates are only employed on a home-based approach. So reference is made to that person's salary in their home location, and allowances and incentives are provided, because no one's going to move to these locations and accept local terms and conditions. And likewise, when we move staff to these locations, it's for a defined period of time, 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. Whereas if you look at Hong Kong, if you look at the salary alone, some people would accept a local salary, some people still require a little bit of a greater incentive. So you've got that mix. Some people use home-based approach, some people use host-based approach. But likewise, because of the different reasons why we employ staff, in Hong Kong, expatriate staff are employed at all levels of seniority, from junior level all the way up to senior level. And because of that, there's a varied salary mix. At junior level, people will be paid in line with the local market, but at senior level, would still need to provide a greater incentive to get the person to come. Whereas in somewhere like Cambodia, etc., they're only employed at senior level. But also, again, the companies and staff need to look not just at compensation, the net salary package. In the case of expatriate compensation, the net take-home pay or the net salary that the person receives can actually be a relatively small component of the total cost of that package, as we saw in Japan, where actually the person's salary is only about 1/3 of the total cost of employing that person in Japan. So companies and staff as well, so HR and the employee, him or herself, they need to look at not just cash compensation when they're moving overseas, but they need to look at the total cost of the salary package, of the compensation and benefits package, and that gives a much clearer perspective of the, I suppose, the relative costs of employing an expatriate, and also the competitiveness of that package in comparison to those elsewhere. Expatriate salaries often do vary according to nationality, because of the fact that most companies would still use that home-based approach. So what we're doing is, if I'm moving somebody from America, I need to maintain that person's American purchasing pattern. Whereas if I'm moving somebody from Malaysia or Philippines, they generally have a lower purchasing pattern. So if I give the person a lower salary, then they can still maintain their Philippines pattern of consumption. So generally, yes, there is, particularly at lower levels of seniority, there is a salary gap between what we could see as Western expatriates and Asian expatriates. However, as we move up that salary scale towards more senior levels, that gap disappears. You end up paying somebody not based on where they're from or their nationality, but you end up paying someone based on the role which they're doing.